Heavy Duty Challenge is being hailed as real and as challenging as the real Europa truck trial. Can it live up to the hype? Find out right here, right now. Greetings Rommies, and welcome to Vrom Vrom, the channel sharing the joy of rock crawling, and to our review of... wait, that's not right. Kidding, of course. Sim racing takes all forms, and here at Vrom Vrom we celebrate it all, especially when it's a brand new game from Nano Games, with titles like Zambi Endless Extermination to Reef Shot to... oh, that's it. As both titles released pre-2020, I believe we may be witnessing a studio's first steps into a new space, in which case, welcome Nano Games to the apex of gaming. We hope your stay here is positive. And to you dear viewer, welcome to the channel if you're new here, and thanks to all those who come here often, especially those who subscribe. My name is Ike, and I will be your host for this video. So what is Heavy Duty Challenge? Well, it's like if Colin McRae played Euro Truck Simulator, only much slower. 3 classes, not of cars, but of trucks, all taking on the same stages, with checkpoints to complete. Be careful driving these stages, because while you'll get points for clearing their gates, you lose them for damaging the environment, reversing, or resetting your vehicle. And the 3 classes of vehicle are separated not by power, but by axle count, 2, 3, and 4. Vehicle maintenance and improvement are a key part of the game cycle, and it absolutely gives the automotive vibe of the Castlevania series, where you must retrace your steps many times once you've reached certain upgrades to get to map areas that were previously inaccessible. We received the key for Heavy Duty Challenge prior to launch, and while the initial version was lacking, it was lacking certainly in areas we would expect for a first-time indie dev. However, they promised they would fix a number of these issues in the public release, and lo and behold, they lived up to their word. One thing is certainly clear, Nano Games are committed to improving this game over time, and hopefully will take feedback such as this with the positive feelings that it's being sent with. If you're here Nano Games, boy, this game is fun. The UI is snappy, is appropriately paced, animations aren't drawn out or amateurish, and diving into the settings menu, everything seems in place. Graphics are a tricky one to approach. From the Steam page, the minimum specs for the GPU is a GTX 1070 Ti, and recommended is an RTX 2080. There may be a subset of simulator gamers who will flat out not be able to run this game due to their hardware. While the other specs are more lenient, they are still high. The CPU RAM recommendations are a Ryzen 5 3rd Gen with 8GB of RAM, or Intel i5 10th Gen and 16GB, further restricting gamers on a budget to possibly not meet minimum specs. If you're on the lower end of these specs, don't expect high FPS from the sim. Outside of the menu screen, which has no FPS limiter and was quite content to use all of my 1080 Ti to pump out 1250 FPS in the menus. If this wasn't a first time product and from an indie dev, I would be significantly more harsh, but we'll leave this as a note rather than an outright mark down. These things can be fixed and added in a later patch. Speaking of things that can be fixed, wheel support. The Steam page recommends a steering wheel, pedals, and shifter. While the pre-release version had no ability to change or fix keybinds, this has now been fixed. We thank the devs once again. With all that said, the first impressions are quite bright. Let's jump into the sim proper. Loading times are between 10 to 30 seconds, and that's for an SSD, with one large lag on level entry. Loading into the cab, it's a very pleasant place to be, even at 30 FPS. This is where the first of the nice to have features comes in. For those with a borderline capable PC, the adaptive VSync allows the game to switch between 24, 30, 48, 60 and presumably native frequencies above that. For us, it switched between 30 and 48 FPS mostly, but for a game of this pace, it's absolutely not a detriment to the experience and was absolutely playable. Another useful feature is the mouse look, which you'll see I use several times in this. From your standpoint in the cab, there is a lot to miss down where your wheels are, and even on the third person view, which uses the same mouse look, there's plenty to miss, especially in the 4-axle class. which has a higher ground clearance, but that just means that when you get stuck, you're a lot more stuck than the smaller classes. Selecting first gear is pointless for all but the steepest terrain, and should be treated as a crawler gear, as would be expected in the real vehicles. So, second to pull away, and no clutch. We'll be generous and assume that this is something mirrored in real life, but to our car-minded perspectives, a clutch would be massively preferred. If not, I think this is the first markdown we can legitimately give rather than a preference. Either way, off we go. And immediately the cab starts bouncing around as the front wheels dive into the first depression in the level unseen from the cab perspective. Having done some very limited moving of HGVs in an off-road environment, the camera movement and cab reaction is perfect. There is simply no other word for it. The movement away from a standstill, which, as you can imagine, is something that happens a lot negotiating these levels, is regretfully jarring, but still realistic, assuming it's using an auto box with selectable gears that is being simulated, and not the manual box with a fake clutch. This will be a recurring gripe, unfortunately, as given the environments, being able to rev up the engine and kick the clutch in some cases would actually be a sensible way of getting yourself out of some binds that you will end up in. I'll get over it, I promise, at some point. The first couple of levels are relatively simple. Give very clear information on what the game's expecting of you and how to progress, switching through different drive modes, the benefits of each, and downsides of keeping all the diff locks on all the time. I know you were thinking that too. Experimentation from ourselves found there's only really 2 drive modes you need, with the rest being again a nice to have. All-wheel drive and all-wheel drive with diff locks. Next, let's make like a Formula 1 commentator and talk about tyres. A very different ask from our usual content in road-going games. When looking from the outside, the tyres look like they're inflated like balloons, deforming to some terrain in a peculiar fashion we've not seen before, and that in reality would detonate any tyre push that kind of limit. That said, on the majority of terrain, it does perform fairly realistically, and from the cab is obviously no issue for immersion at all, and they even got to the point of predictability late on in our testing. Finally, let's talk physics. This is a difficult one, because on the one hand, these are off-road monsters, but on the other hand, they are motorsport monsters, so comparing to real life is difficult. The reviews posted as part of the publicity describe it as real and challenging as it gets in this sector. But there was an alarming amount of times when the Colin McRae approach of if in doubt flat out worked, where the trucks would skip over the terrain without damage or any negative impacts. Granted, flat out is 30 kilometers per hour without upgrades, so we're not really pushing any speed limits, but some of these pitfalls are enough to swallow whole cars. It's a mixed bag. Adding to that, going to give this a pause for effect, there is no force feedback. If that's a deal breaker for you, that's fine, totally understandable, and I had exactly the same opinion at first. Yeah, at first. In truth, and after giving it another go post-launch with my other gripes patched, I don't know what force feedback would add to the experience. Again, with some real-life experience negotiating HGVs off-road, the only thing missing from the steering was some hydraulic resistance from the steering system. I'll let you look up that mess of how trucks steer. At the end of the day, if nanogames were to add force feedback, it would be no different to having a small resistive force applied to the steering constantly. So yes, it's a negative, but once again, for an indie dev, they've clearly focused on the key parts, with the potential to add further features later down the line. And if this is going to be your go-to game, you can just put in a small centering force into your wheels software, and it will absolutely cover you until this happens. Patrons help us bring you better product reviews and sim racing news. Become our hero by becoming a patron at patreon.com/vromvrom. Amongst other perks, becoming a patron will fix your name for posterity like this, but you'll also be able to participate in our podcast recording, get to know what we plan and what we're doing, and will be able to take part in our decisions. So, a big thank you to our patrons and members. If you come here often, please consider subscribing. have Nano Games created a new legacy with Heavy Duty Challenge. With no multiplayer outside of the online leaderboards, the competitive scene that has brought attention to Assetto Corsa Competizione, R-Factor 2 and iRacing may preclude Heavy Duty Challenge from reaching the heady heights of popularity those sims have achieved. And on top of that, little things like no clutch, high-low ratio switching, which we haven't mentioned until now, leave the cries of simulator from other reviews a little lacking. Add to this the seeming lack of ability to share replays or view high score runs from the leaderboard within the game takes away the community feel. Like a rock-crawling MMO, but without the Leroy Jenkins once-in-a-lifetime moments that keep the players of those games coming back for more. For €29.99 USD. If what you're looking for is the next step up in driving challenge from Euro Truck Simulator 2, Heavy Duty Challenge will absolutely scratch that itch. For 15 levels with replayability from the 3 classes of truck available, and plenty of upgrades available to keep pushing for better times and scores, it's a close value proposition. A recommendation would be to put this on your watch list and wait for a Steam sale for any kind of reduction, provided your rig meets the minimum spec. Our experience, while fine, was far from the best on what was high-end equipment only a few years ago. But with all of that said, I for sure will be keeping an eye on Heavy Duty Challenge to see how this game progresses. If Nano Games continues to improve the realism and feature set of HDC, it will get a hearty recommendation from us, especially if they find a way to knit the disparate individuals who will no doubt spend countless hours in this game speedrunning, shortcutting, and generally making use of the sandbox given to maximum effect.